Hi, my name's Bronte, and this is my presentation on letterpress printing. Here's a quick breakdown of my group's research topics, and I'll be focusing on the capabilities and limitations of letterpress printing. Getting straight into it, letterpress printing traditionally is pressing paper onto wood or metal letters and carved images with ink in between. This diagram demonstrates this simple explanation, where the printer acts like a clamshell, stamping the inked raised surface and the paper together. Invented by Johannes Gutenberg in the mid-1400s, the letterpress is the oldest of the traditional printing techniques and remained the default printing form from the 15th to the 19th century. Machinery, processes, and materials. Here is an overview of the 4 different types of letterpress machines, where I'll explain the possibilities and limitations of each. Cylinder presses, including tabletop and freestanding presses, position the image or text, which is nowadays usually in the form of a polymer plate, at the base of the machine, where a thin layer of ink is applied to the plate. The paper is then rolled over the inked graphic using large cylinder rollers to create the relief on the paper. The main benefit to these machines is their ease of use. This is a positive because it can mean quicker turnover time, which in the scheme of letterpress printing can save greatly on costs if you're on a budget. One negative though, particularly with cylinder presses, is the lack of availability of the machines, and that they can take up lots of space if you're in a smaller studio. If this is a concern, you might consider the tabletop press. The plate and press machines use a simple clamshell technique in which the paper and inked surface are stamped together to create the print. This simple difference allows for thicker paper to be used, as it's always going to be flat, unlike the cylinder press in which the paper is rolled over. One downside to these machines, however, is that they aren't ideal for long runs of printing, because it's a very manual process in which the operator must replace the paper each time. Looking closer at the materials, traditional letterpressing uses metal and wood type that is set in an upside down and backwards formation to allow for correct legibility once printed. Once arranged, it's held together using spacing or furniture so that the set type stays put during the printing process. Here's some other terminology you'll want to know. My 2 favourites are leading, which gets its name from the small lead bars that typesetters use to space each line of type. Also, the terms lowercase and uppercase comes from the cases that the letters are held in, where the capitals were held in the upper cases and the small letters in the lower cases. To sum up the capabilities and limitations of letterpress printing, I consider the best part to be the experience. From the perspective of the graphic designer, you get to be a part of the process from the beginning to the end. From carving, printing, die cutting, and embossing, letterpressing gives you the delight of creating something tangible. From the perspective of the user, you get high quality, one of a kind results, where letterpress printing can deliver crisp lines and often an impressive debossing effect. You can also often see the texture and colour of the paper showing through the ink, a result referred to in the industry as salty, and this gives it a lovely handmade and tactile result. I consider the main limitation of letterpress printing to be the time. Even with the advancements of modern letterpress printing, it's still done by hand, one sheet at a time, making it a long process. And I consider this to be the main disadvantage, as it's common for it to take a few weeks to complete from start to finish, which can be too costly for some larger print jobs that are on a budget. I've created an A5 size invitation for the 2018 Melbourne Writers' Festival opening night gala. And considerations particular to letterpress printing that involved my designs included using vector-based artwork in Adobe Illustrator so it can be made into a polymer plate, using only solid uncoated Pantone spot colors, keeping the text above a 6-point size so it doesn't get lost in the impression, using a 3mm bleed and trim marks, and I would provide this artwork as a PDF to my preferred printer. My favourite one is the Hungry Workshop. It's in Brunswick East if you're in the area. And I'd also use a thick 300 DSM cotton blend paper to give it a tactile feel to the card. And these considerations were informed by my teammate Natalie, who focused on the artwork setup. Finally, here's a mock-up I've created using Photoshop effects to try to emulate the embossing effect, particularly on those purple dots. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and I hope you've learned a thing or two if you're considering letterpress printing for your next project.